I went home a little more cheerful, but I left word with Sarah that I could not see either going or comings, nor in fact anybody if they called in the evening. Lupin came into the parlour for a moment with a new hat on, and asked my opinion of it. I said I was not in the mood to judge of hats, and I did not think he was in a position to buy a new one. Lupin replied carelessly, "I didn't buy it. It was a present." I have such terrible suspicions of Lupin now that I scarcely like to ask him questions, as I dread the answers so. He, however, saved me the trouble. He said, "I met a friend, an old friend that I did not quite think a friend at the time, but it's all right." As he wisely said, all is fair in love and war, and there is no reason why we should not be friends still. He's a jolly good all-round sort of fellow, and a very different stamp from that inflated fool of a Perkup. I said, "Hush, Lupin. Do not, pray, add insult to injury." Lupin said, "What do you mean by injury? I repeat, I have done no injury. Crowberlin is simply tired of a stagnant, stick-in-the-mud firm, and made the change on his own account. I simply recommended the new firm as a matter of biz. Good old biz." I said quietly, "I don't understand your slang, and at my time of life I have no desire to learn it. So, Lupin, my boy, let us change the subject. I will, if it please you, try and be interested in your new hat adventure." Lupin said, "Oh, there's nothing much about it, except I've not once seen him since his marriage, and he said he was very pleased to see me and hoped we should be friends. I stood a drink to cement the friendship, and he stood me a new hat, one of his own." I said rather wearily, "But you have not told me your old friend's name." Lupin said with affected carelessness, "Oh, didn't I? Well, I will. It was Murray Posh." May the 14th. It took me nearly the whole day to write to Mr. Crowberlin. Once or twice I asked Carrie for suggestions, and although it seems ungrateful, her suggestions were none of them to the point, while one or two were absolutely idiotic. Of course I did not tell her so. I got the letter off and took it down to the office for Mr. Perkup to see, but he again repeated that he could trust me. Going called in the evening, and I was obliged to tell him about Lupin and Mr. Perkup. To my surprise, he was quite inclined to side with Lupin. Carrie joined in, and said she thought I was taking much too melancholy a view of it. Going produced a pint sample bottle of Madeira, which had been given him, which he said would get rid of the blues. I dare say it would have done so, if there'd been more of it. But as Going helped himself to 3 glasses, it did not leave much for Carrie and me to get rid of the blues with. May the 15th, a day of great anxiety, for I expected every moment a letter from Mr. Crowberlin. 2 letters came in the evening, one for me, with Crowberlin Hall printed in large gold and red letters on the back of the envelope. The other for Lupin, which I felt inclined to open and read, as it had Gilterson Sons and Company Limited, which was the recommended firm. I trembled as I opened Mr. Crowberlin's letter. I wrote him 16 pages, closely written. He wrote me less than 16 lines. His letter was, "Sir, I totally disagree with you. Your son, in the course of 5 minutes' conversation, displayed more intelligence than your firm has done during the last 5 years. Yours faithfully, Gilbert E. Gillam O. Crowberlin." What am I to do? Here is a letter that I dare not show to Mr. Perkup, and would not show to Lupin for anything. The crisis has yet to come. For Lupin arrived, and opening his letter, showed a cheque for £25 as a commission for the recommendation of Mr. Crowberlin, whose custom to Mr. Perkup is evidently lost forever. May the 16th. I told Mr. Perkup the contents of the letter in a modified form, but Mr. Perkup said, "Pray don't discuss the matter. It is at an end. Your son will bring his punishment upon himself." I went home in the evening, thinking of the hopeless future of Lupin. I found him in most extravagant spirits and in evening dress. He threw a letter on the table for me to read. To my amazement, I read that Gilterson and Sons had absolutely engaged Lupin at a salary of £200 a year, with other advantages. I read the letter through 3 times and thought it must have been for me. But there it was. Lupin Pooter, plain enough. I was silent. Lupin said, "What price Perkup now? You take my tip, Gov. Off with Perkup and freeze on to Gilderson, the firm of the future." Perkup's firm? The stagnant dummies have been standing still for years, and now are moving back. I want to go on. In fact, I must go off, as I'm dining with the Murray Poshers tonight. Going and Cummings came in the evening and positively cheered me up with congratulations respecting Lupin. Going said, "I always said he would get on, and take my word, he has more in his head than we three put together." Carey said, "He is a second Hardfur Huttle." July the 1st. I find on looking over my diary nothing of any consequence has taken place during the last month. Today we lose Lupin, who has taken furnished apartments at Bayswater near his friends Mr. and Mrs. Murray Posh, at 2 guineas a week. I think this is most extravagant of him, as it is half his salary. Lupin says one never loses by good address, and to use his own expression, Brickfield Terrace is a bit off. Whether he means it is far off, I do not know. I've long since given up trying to understand his curious expressions. We're sorry to lose him, but perhaps he will get on better by himself. And there may be some truth in his remark that an old and a young horse can't pull together in the same cart. Going called, said the house seemed quite peaceful and like old times. He liked Master Lupin very well, but he occasionally suffered from what he could not help, youth. July the 3rd, Sunday. In the afternoon, as I was looking out of the parlour window, which was open, a grand trap, driven by a lady, with a gentleman seated by the side of her, stopped at our door. Not wishing to be seen, I withdrew my head very quickly, knocking the back of it violently against the sharp edge of the window sash. I was nearly stunned. There was a loud double knock at the front door. Carey rushed out of the parlour, upstairs to her room, and I followed, as Carey thought it was Mr. Perkup. I thought it was Mr. Franchi. I whispered to Sarah over the banisters, "Show them into the drawing-room." There was another loud rat-tat. I changed my coat, but could not see to do my hair, as Carey was occupying the glass. Sarah came up and said it was Mrs. Murray Posh and Mr. Lupin. Well, this was quite a relief. I went down with Carey, and Lupin met me with the remark, "I say, what did you run away from the window for? Did we frighten you?" I foolishly said, What window?" Lupin said, "Oh, you know, because you were playing at Punch and Judy."